we're very excited to sit down and work together on the Gaza peace plan. We have a very, very tough task ahead of us, which is to disarm Hamas, but rebuild Gaza to make life better for the people in Gaza, but also to ensure that Hamas is no longer a threat to our friends in Israel. That's not easy, but it's something that we're committed to in the Trump administration. And I think that we've, even in the past 24 hours, had a lot of good conversations with our friends in the Israeli government, but also, frankly, with our friends in the Arab world who are stepping up and volunteering to play a very positive role in this. I feel very optimistic about where we are. So thank you for the partnership.
That was Vice President J.D. Vance meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu earlier this morning. The administration is looking to bolster the peace deal, despite Israel and Hamas accusing each other of violating the ceasefire. The remains of 2 more Israeli men returned home overnight. The bodies now of at least 13 hostages still in Gaza. Hamas says it's having some difficulty finding all of the remains that need to be returned. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met with the families of recently released hostages yesterday. I want to bring in United Nations Watch Executive Director Hillel Neuer. Hillel, your reaction to where we are right now in the peace deal?
Well, look, J.D. Vance has arrived here in Jerusalem. He and the Trump administration are taking the peace deal very seriously. The problem is that Hamas isn't. You know, we are 13 days after Hamas signed the deal, promised that they would release all of the hostages, living and dead. As you indicated, they are still holding 13 dead hostages. Their excuses are ridiculous. The hostages, living or dead, are their main leverage. Of course, they know where they are. The fact is that Hamas has not released the hostages. They have not disarmed, and they were supposed to release the hostages within 72 hours. We're 13 days later, they haven't released them. They haven't disarmed. The contrary, they are torturing and killing Palestinians they don't like, executing them in cold blood. This isn't the peace deal that Hamas and its backers, Turkey and Qatar, signed onto.
Those images of those executions in Gaza were very jarring, and I saw those as well. I've got Tiana Ladesher on set. She actually has a question about the deal as well to you.
Yeah, and I want to specifically ask about the Qataris. Steve Witkoff on 60 Minutes over the weekend said that the Qataris were the peacemakers, right? Really doubling down on this. But there are reports that Saudi Arabia and the UAE are warning that if Qatar is holding the deal at the center, that it will fall apart. What's your take on that?
Look, Qatar and Turkey both are part of the Muslim Brotherhood network. They are backers of Hamas. Qatar hosts the Hamas chiefs. Turkey also hosts Hamas chiefs, including Suhail al-Hindi, one of the Hamas leaders, who used to run the UNRWA education network in Gaza. So unless the Trump administration squeezes Turkey and Qatar hard, they're not going to deliver Hamas as they promised.
Yeah, and we know that we just saw images of the vice president meeting with Israeli President Herzog. So these conversations are ongoing right now where you are in Jerusalem. The Israeli government now is putting pressure on Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney to abandon his vow to uphold the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant against Netanyahu, upon any visit to the country. New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani is facing similar calls after he said he would also honor that arrest warrant. He even said it right here on Fox. Watch this.
You have said that you would arrest Netanyahu if he came to the United States. You've been very outspoken in your criticism of him. Do you stand by that? You would arrest him if he came here, if you were mayor?
I've said that this is a city that believes in international law, and this is a city that wants to uplift and uphold those beliefs. The Prime Minister...
The United States doesn't stand by the International Criminal Court.
It hasn't signed the treaty for the International Criminal Court. The International Criminal Court, however, has issued a warrant for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, what grounds in the United States could you arrest him on?
As it has for Vladimir Putin. I've said that I believe that we should uphold arrest warrants by the International Criminal Court, and that we should do so only in abiding with all of the laws in front of us.
Think about that, arresting Benjamin Netanyahu in New York. And Elie Wiesel's son has a new op-ed in the Wall Street Journal opinion section. He says a Mamdani mayoralty threatens New York's Jewish community. Hillel, your reaction?
Look, the ICC is primarily a rogue court. Keep in mind that Israel is the only Jewish and democratic state in the entire Middle East. It just survived a 7-front assault led by the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran fired hundreds of missiles that were bombing Tel Aviv. They organized Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthi terrorists, fired thousands of missiles. The ICC hasn't issued a single arrest warrant for the supreme leader of Iran or any other IRGC terrorist in Iran. So going after Israel is absurd. Israel is defending itself. The fact that Mamdani, the candidate to be mayor of New York, would seek to threaten to arrest the Israeli prime minister is, throwing fuel on an anti-Semitic fire that we've seen raging across North America. And I'm going to include Canada as well. The Canadian prime minister, that's a betrayal of Canada's values. Canada is a place, I grew up in Canada. The synagogue where I went to, someone shot at the synagogue a year or two ago. The Jewish school in my neighborhood was shot at multiple times. It's a conflagration across Canada for the Canadian Prime Minister to say Netanyahu is not welcome and he's going to want to see him prosecuted is just pouring fuel on a very dangerous fire.
But what did you make of that op-ed by Elie Wiesel-Son? Because the question here is we're less than 2 weeks away from the election day here in New York City, and he talks about the fact that we've already seen an incredible amount of anti-Semitic behavior since October 7th here in New York, which has been shocking to many. But what about the Jewish community here? Can they rally around support and support Cuomo to stop Mamdani from taking over the city that, again, has the largest Jewish population in our country?
Look, I'm not going to comment on U.S. domestic politics, but I will say this. There is no question that Mamdani's statements are clearly promoting anti-Semitism. When you falsely accuse the world's only Jewish state of genocide, apartheid, colonialism, these are the modern day equivalent of the blood libel. And we know in history what kind of consequences this incitement leads to. This is a guy, Mamdani, who can't condemn Hamas, and he is rather overtly supporting Muslim Brotherhood figures who are connected to terrorism, including people connected to the 9/11 attacks. It's astonishing that we're in a time in New York City, which was hit barely 20 years ago by radical Islamic terrorists who blew up the World Trade Center, and you have someone who's hanging out with people who were, involved with the World Trade Center bombers. It's astonishing, and it's a very scary place we're at today in the United States.
Yeah, no, there's a photo of him arm in arm with one of the men that was involved in the 1993 World Trade Center attack. And this is why there is such uproar about his statements and what this could do to New York. Well, anyway, Hillel, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you joining us today. It's always, you're such a great voice in all of this.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you, sir.